This conference will now be recorded.
After it did its test flights for the first time to Oshkosh and entered it into the competition and won a Lindy Award. And they're named after Charles Lindbergh. It's actually a really prestigious award. There's a lot of competition, workmanship, finish, just all sorts of items go into that. And I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
So, I think that embodies a lot of the general aviation philosophy that we're able to see at a small airport like Heber. So thank you for representing us and making us proud.
Well, it was expressed to me, it was, you equate a Lindy with a Olympic medal. One of the friends at the airport goes, you know what that really means? And I didn't. He goes, that's the Olympics for airplanes. So you won an Olympic medal, which is pretty cool.
So you can be like the athletes and get the Olympic ring tattoos on the. I mean, I think if you compete in the Olympics, you can. So maybe a little aviation.
I don't know about a picture of Charles on my body somewhere.
Okay. All right, let's move on to public comments. This is anybody that wishes to address the board for an item that's not otherwise on the agenda. I'd ask that you please do so now, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please step forward, or if somebody is online, state your name and where you live, and we'll give you the floor. Is there anybody here in attendance? Is there anybody online? I can't see anybody online. I don't know if they're raising their hands. Are you watching that, Robin? Okay. And IT doesn't have anything to say. All right. The next item on here, I don't see a manager's report. Is there anything that you need to report out on, Travis? Okay. Item number 1 under general business is the Hangar B discussion. Mr. Robinson. Hello.
Is this right here? Yep.
It is.
Try that microphone right there. That should
By
be
the
good.
microphone.
Should be good.
Can you hear me now? So thanks for making a little bit of time for me. I thought I'd start off with a quick who I am and what I've done, because I used to sit where you guys sit, although it was in the little room next door. I was on the first airport advisory board back in late 90s, 2000s, served a number of different terms, chairman for a number of terms back in those days. My Heber Valley Airport history starts in 1980 when I moved to Utah to start a career in the ski industry and got checked out to fly gliders at the Heber Valley Airport. Um, Started working for the old Heber Valley Flying Service in 1982 as a glider guy, tow pilot, flight instructor, all that kind of stuff. Stuck with them till they went out of business in 87. Traveled around, got my chops, came back in 1992 and opened SOAR Utah as a commercial operation with an SSO from Heber City back in the day. At that point in time, I kind of played the role of airport manager. There was no real airport manager. I had a contract with the city to do the mowing out there. I was there 7 days a week, 6 months out of the year, thumping it as hard as I could. Uh, as we matured, both the airport and the city's view of the airport, it became apparent that there was an issue with the city funding ongoing operations through general fund, and that the airport needed to become self-sufficient. This was, again, before there was an official airport manager. And so the airport board, uh, with a lot of my push and pressure, worked to develop what we see out there now. I was instrumental in helping develop the taxi lanes that led to the Daniel Hangar development, that led to the Horseshoe development. I was instrumental in pushing that the city build the last block of 75 by 75s. Timing was horrible. Those of you who were around or have heard the story, it happened right around the stock market crash, and the city got cold feet. They'd borrowed money for that project at 1%, but cold feet, and ended up bailing out on that project, making little or no money on that at all. I got frustrated, I'll be quite honest, at that point in time, and resigned my position on the board. So that's my background. 1996, I believe, is when I built Hangar B. Hangar B is a beautiful structure with the best view on the airport with the green roof. And it's worked out really, really well for us over the years. When we were a full-fledged commercial operator, I rented space in Hangar C, which is right by the Russ McDonald Airport sign when you come down Airport Road. Change in ownership there, and other things were happening at the airport, and it became time to close doors as a commercial operator. I operate now under the umbrella of the Utah Soaring Association, which is a nonprofit private flying club, and we meet the rules and regulations as set forward in the stuff that the airport operates under. So that's who, when, where, and now today is why. I'm asking for a 1-year lease extension based on capital improvements that I did last fall to bring gas and then ultimately heat to Hangar B. I did that with the knowledge and tactic approval of the airport manager and of Heber City. So I ask that you act favorably, I guess that's what I'm supposed to say, and extend my lease by 1 year.
When does your lease currently expire?
26. It expires August 31st, 2 years from now.
And is that a reversionary lease?
It is a reversionary, and capital improvement for lease extension, as in 2.555 of rates, lease, and charges, is only available to those leases that are reversionary. And my understanding currently, and I could be wrong, is that there are only 5 hangars currently under that reversionary status, and those are the A, B, C, and D hangars on the ramp.
Well, obviously, today's meeting is about rates and fees, and one of the items that's in our report is how we're going to handle reversionary leases that expire and what the city's position and the airport's position is going to be on for those um, for those uh, for those leaseholds. Um, I'm certainly not familiar, and we don't have any documents up here regarding capital improvements or how that would comply with the lease. Matt or Travis, do you have anything, or is this something that we should ask city council to maybe kind of, or not the city council, but city attorney to investigate for us?
I actually have a copy of the pertinent rates, lease, and charges for improvements based on capital lease extensions for capital improvements with me. I'm very aware of the financial pressures facing the airport in the near future, and would tell you today I would revisit um, formal lease extensions outside of the existing uh, document that's in force when that time comes. All I'm asking for is the 1 year based on capital improvement under the existing
How
guidelines.
large is that hangar?
I'm sorry?
How large is your hangar? What's the size of the hangar? What's the size?
500 square feet,
2,500?
35.
3,500. And what are you currently paying in lease for that?
So in 1996, it was a much different airport than it is today.
I understand. I'm
And
not passing judgment. I'm just curious.
no, it just because it makes me laugh because it's ludicrous the amount of money that I'm paying today. I came in under what was called the Pioneer land lease. I pay $100 a year for my current lease, which I understand is ludicrous. And I'm willing and absolutely expect to revisit a proper term lease extension once we get through today's business at a different rate. Talking with the airport manager, floating a number, um, that number would be closer to $15,000 a year than $100 a year.
So I'm currently leasing a 3,500 square foot hangar, and I'm paying well over $3,000 a month for that.
$3,000 a month?
A month. So close. It's over 40,000 a year for a similar. It's a 70 by 50 hangar, so 3,500 square feet. Just giving you kind of the market.
So I'm confused. Is that 3,000 a month or 3,000 a year?
No. It's over $3,000 per month is what I'm spending on that. So it's actually over $40,000 a year, just to kind of give you an idea on what the market rate is on a hangar. But one of the things that was discussed at our last meeting, and I don't know if you've had a chance to review the meeting, but it was also kind of addressed in a letter that was addressed to us today. And if you stick around for the rates and charges, you might hear that, was the fact that there is some serious consideration that was put forward by several members of the Airport Advisory Board about how we can look at those reversionary hangars and look at long-term leases with those, but we would be looking at capital investments to the city that would reflect what those hangars are probably worth. I know some of the numbers that Nadeem was talking about were 800,000 to $1 million on those, and that's not in front of us today, but some of those items are. Just kind of giving you some of the things that we talked about at the last meeting.
I hear that kind of ramp talk as well.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't want to go too deep into this. There's a philosophy of rising tide floats all boats. And is everybody going to be looked at similarly as other leases, even non-reversionary leases, become due? Are you guys discussing how you're going to deal with that? It's the elephant in the room. It's the $5.5 million that needs to be raised in relatively short order. I would tell you I'm going to go off script, and I'm going to tell you that it's going to need to be done well before the current documentation says for the final phase being 3038. I truly believe that the Heber Valley Airport will become in the spotlight as an Olympic Gateway Airport. Heber City is an Olympic venue city, and I truly believe that there will be pressure to finish that project by 2032, so it's operational well before the Olympics. I was around for the 2002 Olympics. I don't know how many of you were. Prior to 9/11, Customs leased my office. There was a temporary control tower. And even after 9/11, the customs agency came to the airport. It was an Olympic destination airport. Those same things I see happening at a larger, grander scale. I believe that there's money available to help the city's portion. It's just going to take the right people with the right dedication and the right level of energy to track down that money. That same money can be used to help the renewed emphasis on Main Street. You know, we are a destination. So
Well,
anyway,
yeah,
all I
no.
want today is 1 year.
Matt,
That's all I want.
is this something that needs to have the city attorney weigh in on?
Recommend we delay this until the city attorney or airport attorney can opine on it. Recall at your last airport advisory board meeting, these issues with the reversionary hangars B, C, and D were significant discussion points. And I think as we move forward, we need to be mindful of those discussion points and the policies that you're going to be recommending to the city council on these particular hangars.
Is there any disagreement amongst against tabling this for the city attorney to give us some recommendations or at least some advice on? I don't think we need to take a vote on that because there's no action item that's here. But sorry, we can't give you an answer today. But I think because of a lot of the pending matters that are in front of us, we just simply have to wait for the for council to advise us.
I appreciate you bringing up the Olympic Gateway issue, because even though it's that far down the line, I think it's something we ought to be thinking about right now. Having experienced one of the airports I ran, NASCAR, and how that brings in and how that expanded over the years, it's a good point to bring up. So I appreciate you bringing it up.
Thank you.
And actually, I mean, our next item on the agenda here is we're going to be talking about some of that. And I think there's I think there's some good.
Yeah.
I think some of your comments, you may not have, at least my read on this, some of those comments have been reflected in here. So,
I was reading at the last Olympics, they paved some of the sewer fields in the winter to have parking.
Yep.
Maybe we pave the whole sewer field and have airplane parking and charge a premium for that.
exactly.
I'll stand out there with the stop sign on 189, like the
I'll
Payne's
help you out.
class.
I'll help you out. So, Matt, do you think we could have something back to us in fairly short order on that? I know Mr. Robinson would like to obviously have some clarity on what the position is here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe
Okay. All right.
Okay, I'll see
right.
you again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to item number 2, which is the rates and charges policy. And I'm going to make the personal plea to my fellow board members here. I've been out of country, got back, saw my wife for 10 minutes. So I'd hope that we wouldn't have as long of a meeting today as we had last time. So
Especially when you're on the East Coast and the meeting ends at.
that's right.
like
Exactly.
about
Exactly.
10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I have a
Well,
hard
I think
stop at 6:45. So
Well, I would like to be out of here by 5 if we can make that happen. That's my personal desire. But so in that vein, Ryan, you gave us a great report last time. I've read through the report. It looks like you've made some I won't call them tweaks, but you've taken a lot of the feedback that we gave you I noticed that you've right-sized the budget, so thank you for doing that as we requested. And it also looked like you've only gone to 2030 on the expenditures, which again was something that we discussed for quite some time because of the impact of the Olympics, and also that's a very foreseeable point in time that you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So you took that. So maybe you could highlight what's changed and give us a brief synopsis on what your recommendations are, and then we could kind of talk and ask questions as a board. Does that sound
No, that sounds like a great point,
reasonable
Jason.
to my fellow board members here?
Right. So as Jason said, we made updates to the report based on the feedback we had from the last Airport Advisory Board back in early June. Just starting off where I left off, essentially with the last slide from that, and I only have 4 slides this time, so just a real brief presentation. When you look at kind of next steps, the feedback we got last time was great, and so we were able to take that, incorporate that into our analysis, and update the report, providing a lot of the input from the AAB into there. We have this rate-based pro forma calculator that we use to kind of calculate different scenarios and presented the options in the report. One of the things that I've tried to do is we haven't established a target reserve balance, but I've tried to give you an idea of what that reserve balance would be based on some of those different options. And if there is a reserve balance the AAB would like to try and build up to by a certain time, that kind of analysis that we did will allow you to do that. And that's something we'll turn over to the city upon completion of our project. So that can be done on a regular basis and presented to the AAB with current results. The really kind of, I think the goal for tonight, whether you get there or not, is a public resolution proposed schedule of rates, proposed changes to the fee and rate schedule. And then following that, a kind of annual presentation of both operating budget, the ACIP, as well as what that reserve balance is. So you can see the impact that the changes that you adopt, what they're having, and adjustments you need to make, either increasing or decreasing going forward. And then suggest kind of a rolling capital budget with periodic adjustments at least every 5 years going forward. So you don't need to make changes to these rates and charges every year. In fact, making changes now and maybe waiting to see the impact of those changes, because so much of this is based on assumptions that we really don't fully understand yet, is not a bad idea. So getting into what's changed, talking about just kind of taking the direction from Jason, this study is not an examination of the city's approved budget. There's a process for that. We're using that budget as an input for our analysis. And so we're really focused on how do we generate more revenue. But there was a lot of discussion, I think, in the last meeting on the city budget for the airport. And we did take that input and make some changes to our analysis based on that. One of those things, we eliminated the professional services budget, the Fund 41, which is the capital budget. So there's professional services in both operating budget. Those are the annual ones that you're going to have. And that's kind of like ad hoc or on-call type professional services, similar to what we're doing here. Then you've got your capital budget professional services, which are really engineering services for implementation of the ACIP. When Ardura provided their ACIP, their capital plan, that included their fees in there for those engineering services. So it's essentially being double counted in the budget. Doesn't change what's going to get spent. You just essentially over budget it. And when we put that into our analysis, we were over budgeting for the next 15 years based on that expense. So we cut out $60,000 of annual expenditures in the capital budget there. We also assumed that the budget for this fiscal year of $56,000 in capital equipment, another $58,000 in operating equipment, is only going to be needed every 5 years. When I went back and looked at the history of this, there's really maybe like a $7,000 annual expense in equipment for the airport, and you're going to have some big hits as equipment purchases come up. And so that eliminated a lot of expenditure in there as well, which really, skipping down to the bottom, brings that sponsor participation capital down to about 4.4 million. Now, again, that's actually less now than what the ACIP shows that Ardura provided. And I've got an asterisk there on that 4.4 million. As Jason said, we're really setting this rate setting period from now until 2030 to really focus in on where we have a lot more clear picture of what needs to happen. Beyond 2030, those assumptions get very gray, and there's a lot of variation in those assumptions. So rather than try and make assumptions on what's going to happen that far off into the future, we said let's focus on the next 5 or 6 years, and then as that gets closer and we have more input onto what's going to happen following that, you can make adjustments with better information. So that 4.4 million does not include any ACIP expenses in 2031, which takes about $700,000 or $750,000 out of that capital budget. That's where that's lower than what's actually shown in our DURA's report. And again, you can debate whether that should be 4.4 or 5.2. That's why that number varies. But I just wanted to bring that up.
Just to be clear, you still had in that 4.4, which was the subject of intense debate last time, the North Campus, because there were some that felt that if that's developed, that matching fund could be borne by the developers versus this. So, but that's outside of the 2030
Exactly.
envelope, so we don't need to even engage in that discussion.
So for the assumption of that 4.4, I assume that there's no expense in that for that North Campus development. But that's why that number may vary from what you see for the ACIP number provided by Ardura. When you look at what we change in the analysis, kind of that second set of bullet points here, some small things like increasing miscellaneous income. The budget was, I want to say, about $500 for miscellaneous income, which includes the AOA access badges. And based on the 140 that are paying $40 a month, we essentially brought up that budget to what it probably should be. Then you have airport business, FBO SASO lease revenue. We assume a 31,500 square foot increase for Hangar F. That's in development now. We used a big part of the discussion was on asset management and the hangars and whether that $300,000 that we had in the budget for this next fiscal year was accurate. And so what we did, I went back and looked at the revenue income from the previous fiscal year that included, the current tally, Peterson, McCord. So all of these upcoming leases and expansions, those are all into that current lease or that current budget already from the last fiscal year. And so we just used that number, adding a 3% growth from there. In terms of the hangar transfer fees, again, we assume a 3% of estimated $5 million in value of sales in 2025 from a new development that's expected to go in next year, and then building rent of 34 cents per square foot monthly from the reversionary hangars. And that's part of the discussion we have tonight on what that rate should be, but we're assuming those in the model because those hangars are going to revert, and it's just a matter of what do you charge for those? And is it a sale of the asset where you're taking the funds up front, or is it an annuity and you're getting those funds over term? So really, it's not a huge difference. I didn't want to assume that you would be selling the assets and having all that cash up front, because if that doesn't happen, it puts you in a very different financial position. If it does, that's great. You're going to take all of that cash up front. It's going to put the airport in a very good position. Part of the concern was, and this is a legal question, of whether the city has to get the FAA's permission to be able to release that asset and be able to sell it. That's not something we're taking position on, but if that's something the city wants to pursue, you'd want to get guidance on whether the FAA needs to sign off on selling an airport asset or not. So
just to be clear,
yep.
Whether you sell it, you could also do another thing where the lease is prepaid up front, or a significant portion of it is. There's probably ways that you can legally do essentially the same as a sale without it being a sale, right?
Exactly.
So just for the members on the board, you get to the same outcome. It's just, it may be contracted differently.
Yeah. And these are not options or decisions you have to make today or even this year. We're just trying to make an assumption to account for the revenue from those decisions down the road. And so whether we assume it's a sale or whether we assume it's a lease, the revenue is there. It's just a matter of when that revenue is coming in. So we wanted to be conservative in assuming a lease with that revenue coming in over time, because if any of these projects slip or it doesn't sell in the year that we expect, that may delay being able to have the funds available for the capital projects you need to pay for. So I revised this kind of fee menu that I presented last time, actually added some additional fees that were brought up at the last AAB meeting. I'll just kind of point out the new ones here that have changed. I think we talked about the establishing a hangar rent of 34 cents square foot monthly for city-owned hangars. There was a discussion on the commercial aeronautical permit fee, changing that from a 2% of gross income to a fixed tiered structure.
To be clear, today it's 1%.
Sorry, yes, it's 1%. You're right. 1% is the current one. To my knowledge, none of that has been collected up through this last fiscal year.
I have contributed to that.
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Yes, and that was at the end of the last fiscal year, right?
Or for 2023 fiscal year, well, 2024 fiscal year.
Okay. And so the idea of going to a fixed tier structure to make it a lot easier to be able to collect that revenue rather than having to track down financials and figure out what the percentage of income should be. There was a discussion on a monthly parking fee. And so this is something we had collected rates and fees on from the comparable airports, but we didn't recommend implementing a monthly parking fee because it would require likely infrastructure and resources to collect that fee. But the AAB brought up there could be potential to contract that out or some other ways to do that with very little investment. One of the other options I bring up here, we had a lengthy discussion on landing fees and whether those should increase or not. There is an option to escalate landing fees by up to 3% annually without requiring a study. And so I put that in here as an option in addition to the increase of landing fees for transient and potentially a based aircraft landing fee as well. So those are all potential options. You don't have to do all of these. It's kind of a menu that you can pick and choose from to essentially build that reserve that you'd like to target by a certain date.
So let me understand this. I looked at your initial report
Mhm.
and you had an option 1A, or the final report, excuse
Yep.
me. You had an option 1A and a option 1B, and then you had option 2,
Yes.
which the way I read that was that option 2, which had 6 items in it, would satisfy the reserve requirement for the airport. Option 1A or 1B would do the same, numbers slightly different.
Yes.
So if, from what I saw you put up there was, are you not using this as conclusions, and are you saying we should pick from that menu individually?
Exactly. So it's kind of an a la carte menu, and then it presented 3 options here that you can use to select from those items on the menu.
So, Mike, if you don't mind, if I just want, I'll try not to take too much time. I liked the way you set this up because as a former airport manager, director, I found that option 1A appealed to me because the simplicity of it, independent of some of the other things that we're going to talk about, but I like the simplicity of it and the ability to manage it relatively simply, and based on your analysis of the number of aircraft we'd have here and weights and everything, it looked fairly reasonable. So could you explain to me why you've gone away from that and given us essentially 10 items to pick and choose and manipulate and put together, which I don't think we can get out of here by 5:45 this afternoon doing that.
Yeah, to answer your question,
Yeah.
there's a lot of options available to the city and what they want to pursue. We're not making a recommendation on what the city should pursue to collect that revenue. So I just wanted to say, here are all of the options from the rates and fees study that we've figured out that the city could reasonably justify in terms of it collecting additional revenue. And presenting option 1A as increasing the transient aircraft fee is a very straightforward option. My understanding is that would require a study like we did here to be able to go above 3%. But yeah, that would essentially get you to almost $800,000 in reserve by 2030. So it'd fund the capital improvement projects of the ACIP for the next 5 or 6 years, in addition to generating another $800,000 in reserve to pay for future ACIP projects down the road.
Can we go back to the list,
I think
the
so.
menu?
And just as I think what might make sense from a flow perspective is let's let Ryan get through his presentation, then let's ask questions about
Oh,
the
I thought you were
presentation,
done.
and then maybe we can engage in discussion, right? So that way we can kind of stay somewhat logical in some of
Yeah,
this.
and I'll finish up real quick because I am almost done. So that was option 1, just raising landing fees for transient aircraft. If you wanted to bring that up to 1.1 million, you could essentially remove that exemption for based aircraft. That's really not a popular option, but it was just presenting that gets you, if you want to target $1 million reserve by 2030, that gets you there plus a little bit more. You could essentially accomplish the same thing without significantly raising landing fees by doing this menu here of options, which is increasing fuel flowage fees and then a lot of the smaller revenue generating items, such as the commercial aeronautical permit fee, the AOA access fee for all hangar owners, more of kind of what I've heard referred to as the nickel and diming, but it's a lot of different options that are bringing in revenue from a variety of sources, not just from the transient aircraft or from landing fees as a whole. So those are really your two options: increased landing fee. Part of that increase in landing fee could be assessing landing fees on based aircraft, or you don't significantly touch landing fees, but you increase them by 3% annually, and you increase fuel flowage fees and some of these other fees. You get to the same point, about 1.1 million in reserve by 2030 from either of those options.
Are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if there's questions on the report, let's ask those of Ryan, and then we can maybe try to see if we can.
Questions, we have some recommendations on how we could maybe proceed.
You have a question?
If you have a question,
No, I don't have I have a very simple question. Matt, you can answer this. I don't know how many of you received Nadim's letter before this.
I think we all did.
And he's making some assertions here about things that we're proposing here that would be in violation with his settlement of the city. Is that assertion correct?
So let's go through a couple of these items on
Okay.
Nadim's letter. That might be, and Matt, maybe you
Well,
can.
Let me just say, there's a consensus, I believe, among the tenants of the airport that we're really tired of being nickeled and dimed. This whole issue is brought about by jets. If we didn't have all the jets coming in here, we would be a nice little B-class airport and everybody would be happy. And there are other sources of revenue, such as raising the landing fees, such as moving the fuel flowage fees up, such as the sale of those large revisionary hangars that would bring an enormous amount of revenue and eliminate the burden on the local people. But we need to know, are his assertions here that some of these things would be in violation of the settlement agreement? Is that correct?
I've not seen his letter. I've been on vacation this week, so I've not seen it. I can tell you that before I present this to the city council, I'm going to make sure that the airport attorney looks at it one last time, crosses the T's, dots the I's to verify that we are in complete compliance with not only our grant assurances, but with the settlement documents that we entered into in good faith with OK3. I can tell you that there are two provisions dealing with landing fees, fuel flow fees, that are significant provisions. With fuel flow fees, we can only increase those every 5 years. The next window to do that is January 2025. Okay, we've not increased fuel flow fees since 2012, 12 years ago. That's number one. Number two, in the settlement document, it does state that in order to increase landing fees above 3%, there is a process, there is a study that we have to go through to substantiate any increase above 10%. But the settlement agreement does allow us to increase it at a rate less than 3% annually without having to go through that study. So again, I'm not sure what he's asserting in there. I think personally, it's a good recommendation, it's a solid recommendation. We'll take it back to the airport attorney just to verify that they're in compliance, again, not only the grant assurance, but the settlement documents, to make sure that we're not running afoul.
So real quick on the fuel flowage fees, there were several things in Nadim's letter, one of which was to talk about the reversionary leases. I think some of those reversionary leases are addressed in your report. Some of them have not reverted yet. And they are looking at the outlying years, probably de minimis impact in 2030, but certainly in years past 2030. So the fact that this has been reduced down to a 2030 window might make that somewhat less germane. Is that
Yeah, so
correct?
all 5 of the reversionary hangars will revert before 2030, but both options up here assume that when they revert, they go to the 34 cents per square foot per month.
And there was also to the comment about the landing fees. I think, Matt, you just addressed that. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at these multiple options instead of just increasing landing fees, is because, at least as I heard Nadim articulated at our last meeting, the airport and the city has an obligation to look at other funding sources instead of solely making it on transient aircraft or landing fees that are there. Is that my understanding is that that's why we're going through some of this exercise instead of just doing that, is because we have an obligation under the settlement agreement to do that.
Correct.
Okay.
Looking at trends, not
Well, and
averages.
so then the next item was the fuel flowage fee, right? Which was, and again, if I'm remembering Nadim's comments on this, he was stating that we have to be looking at the trends of the fuel flowage fee instead of just comparable fuel flowage fees. So it has to go from, if it goes from 5 cents at one airport or regional airports here, 5 cents to 15 cents, well, that's the trend, that's the percentage. And if I'm reading in your report, the 5-year regional percentage change for jet fuel was 417% and 167% for avgas. Is that so? So that's using his definition of trends, which is the delta change.
Correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that we addressed the comments that Nadim
We
had.
go to 20 cents a gallon.
We could go 467% if that's the regional average of what our current 5 cents flowage fee is. Now, that's obviously not what you're recommending here, but that's the latitude that the Airport Advisory Board probably has, to be able to make a bona fide recommendation to the City Council.
So, just so I'm clear, you believe that the settlement with OK3 limits our ability to raise the landing fees? Is that what you're, I just want to make sure I understand.
Okay, well, that was, I haven't read the settlement agreement.
Yeah.
I'm simply repeating what I heard Nadim articulating. So I don't know, obviously, I'm repeating what he believes his position is, which is we have to explore other funding sources prior to raising the landing fees. And so I'm simply going by what I heard him articulate and my impression of what he was saying. Now, as we all know, there's always two sides to everything, but that's, and I'm looking for, he's a large operator on our airport. He's critical to the success of the airport. So I'm paying attention to what he says.
First understand the 5% increase, first understand that the increase in fuel flowage fees that come with every 5 years is not part of the settlement agreement. It's actually language that's included in his FBO agreement, which he got back in 2010, 2011. In other words, when that FBO lease was assigned to him, that language was assigned to him.
That predated him. Okay, he didn't negotiate it. It was.
What is part of, that is not part of the settlement documents, but what is part of the settlement documents is some language referring to the landing fees. In that, if we were to increase them more than 3%, we have to go through an exercise to justify the increase of about 3%. But we can increase them up to 3% without having to go through the exercise. So the very last dot on the first page of the letter that Bill just gave me, it says that in terms of the landing fees, that if you increase it above 3%, you've got to go through a process, analysis, as Nadine calls it, to justify the increase. Recommendation 2 is saying, hey, let's go up to 3%, not over 3%. Therefore, we would not have to go through that exercise. And to be quite frank with you, we've actually gone through that exercise in my mind's eye over the last several months, going through this analysis. You vetted it significantly 2 months ago. You're vetting it again tonight. That's a pretty thorough process to determine what they want. A couple of quick things here. The first dot here, referring to the hangars, B, C, and D. What you decide to do there is a policy decision, whether it's looking at trying to sell the asset, right? You get a one-time lump of money you use towards closing that delta, that gap, or whether you want to lease it out at the new lease rate that we're going through the DOT recommendation tonight, is a policy decision. There's not one right or wrong way. It's simply a policy decision based upon the expertise that you have and the recommendation you're going to make to the City Council. There's nothing legal or illegal about that. It's a policy discussion. And quite frankly, there are people who have disagreements with policy decisions based on where you sit, quite frankly. The second dot said that he's discussed with Matt and Travis the potential value of the city when the Daniel Hangar lease is terminated and about having a game plan to properly monetize that value. We have been talking with Ryan. I've been talking with Casey about this very idea. Discussion on number 2 is not done yet. We are still going to continue discussing number 2. Number 3 dot, why has the recommendation for SASO fees changed from the prior recommendation of 2% of revenue to a tiered annual fee ranging from 500 to 2,000? Well, we talked about this in public. This is no secret. It's that the administration of it is much simpler doing a fixed fee, but we suspect we'll get the same value, the same revenues out of it as we would with 50%. That's the idea behind it. The last dot there, we talked about the landing fees. And the very last dot, sorry, the only dot on the last page, talking about the fuel fluid fee. Again, the fuel fluid fee can only be increased every 5 years. The next window is January 2025. This is not part of the settlement document. This is part of his FBO lease that he was assigned back in the early 2000s.
And that, just that last dot was what I referred to with the 413% and 167%, which contrary to this, the consultants actually did do that analysis of what the trends were. So
Jason, I have a question. Are the value of those, I give the A, B, and C, D, those big hangars, are the value of that in your calculations here?
They are, yes.
no,
Did you
the
value
lease
them?
rate, the lease
At the
rate,
lease rate, yes.
but not the value.
Okay, not the value, because on my tarmac, 50 by 50 sold for over $600,000. You could easily get $1 million+ for those big
Each one.
Each one.
hangars.
And you may not be able to do it as a sale, as we discussed earlier. It may have to be some constructive type of
So the
long-term.
decision is you lease them monthly based on the new lease rate of
34 cents per month.
per month. Or do you sell the asset and get that one-time lump sum money again? That is a policy decision.
But the FAA has to approve the sale.
And that's the outlier here. The FAA would have to approve that. That's exactly right.
So it seems to me that we've got two roads in front of us here. We've got option one, and let's just say 1A, 1B is option one, and we've got option two. Okay, option two takes a look at a variety of factors. Option one is singular, and we obviously heard Nadim's comments on that earlier. So I think what would be the most effective use of our time is to take a straw vote and see which way we want to be. Or we want to be on option one, or do we want to be on option two? Because then we can center in on that, and then we can start being constructive about building a recommendation for the city council.
The only thing I would add to that, because actually that's kind of where I came into this, is there may be even an option 3, which is option 1 or option 2 or something from option 2 added to option 1. That's, I mean, I don't want to complicate it, but there may be something in the option 2 menu that might, you might be able to reduce, for example, the landing fee by doing that. I'm just saying, I'm not proposing that. I'm just opening that up.
And I'm trying to, and again, I'm trying to get to, I think one of the critical things that we talked about at the last board meeting, and Scott, you weren't here for this, but one of the most critical things was we can't be doing this every 5 years, right? We need to get something done now, or a recommendation made now. And we need to be revisiting this in May of next year to see what it's actually looking like. And so, we may end up with part of just hypothetically, if we take option 2 where we've got these items, then we may end up next year saying, you know what, we do need to increase the landing fees because we're not there yet, right? So
I think Nadim's main concern is that his customers are not paying the brunt of everything.
and that's where
And-
option 2,
And I think the city's concern is that the users of the airport pay for the airport. So I think it needs to be a combination of both. And maybe we should go through the list and do a straw poll on each item.
so what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to go to option 2 where we've got multiple items, and then we can take a look at the landing fees to perhaps bring up the necessary balance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'm just going to ask you to take a straw poll. I mean, I certainly totally agree with that. That's where my personal head is at, which is let's spread it out, and then let's see where landing fees need to be. But is there others that have a contrary to view to that?
We need to remember we have a list of 140 people that want to be on the airfield.
Okay.
So
Bill, do you?
I didn't hear the question.
No, so what Scott was talking about, which I think is good, is let's go through the items on option 2. Let's talk about those one at a time.
366 on the waiting list.
Well, and we'll see how many are real, but then we'll see where we're at with that. And then we can always use landing fees out of option one as something that we have to fall back on to if we feel that we're not in agreement on some of these other items. Does that sound everybody?
Because I think if all users pay a portion and the transitory users pay a portion, I think everybody will be happy.
Okay. I personally, if nobody's happy, everybody's,
Exactly.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, let's turn to page, what was it, page 10? Okay, let's go to page 10. Everybody go to page 10 and let's look at option two.
Bullet point 4, it states, and I quote, as a matter of fact, it is my understanding that the consultants have been directed by the city to not consider the airport budget when making airport fee recommendations. That is not true. Understand, this is a rates and fee study. Its primary purpose is to identify the revenues and the rates which will feed into the budget. I can tell you that the budget has been analyzed extensively to determine what revenues and what rates are needed to make sure that it is balanced each and every year. So that statement is absolutely false.
Okay, I think that's important. And we heard that from Ryan earlier, which is we're not analyzing the budget here, other than the fact that you found some issues where the consulting fees were counted twice, both as an improvement project and also just as a expense. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I do have one quick question on option two. One item that I noticed that you spoke about that I didn't see on option two, and I'm hoping that it was an oversight, was the 10% fee on rental cars. So should that have actually been added to option two?
It can be. We don't have a way to estimate what that would be, not knowing what the revenue would be from it. So it's not included in option two, but it's something you can do at top of options. Again, there's
Okay.
a menu. Some of these we don't know what the revenue would be, so you can still implement that in the scheduled rates and fees.
Okay.
We just didn't include it in our analysis.
Okay. So let's look at item number one. And then we'll open up on option number two. Item number one, increase the fuel flowage fee from 5 cents a gallon to 10 cents a gallon for avgas, which is a 100% increase, and 15 cents for jet fuel, which is a 200% increase after January 2025, consistent with the we can look at it again in 5 years on the trend difference between that. So yeah, it appears from the report and from, again, what I heard Nadeem articulate and what I see in his letter, which is we have up to 467% that we can increase the jet fuel and up to 167% that we can increase the avgas flowage fee. So we know last year we pumped about 1.2 million gallons of jet fuel. So we can do the math. Every 5 cents in jet fuel is $60,000 in income to the city.
Is this locked in again for another 5 years?
It is locked in for 5 years.
On the fuel flowage fees every 5 years. The last time this report increased in 2012.
Yeah. So
Would you,
I'm in favor.
okay, would you stop at 15 cents as the recommendation, or do you think there's a will to go to 20
I'd
cents?
stop at 15.
Okay. Do you think that avgas, could we go to 15, should we go at 15 cents for avgas so it's the same as avgas as it is for jet fuel?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd keep the percentage of avgas increase less based on the study.
I mean, we only pumped 30,000 gallons. Nadeem said we only pumped 30,000 gallons of avgas last year anyway, so it's probably.
Well,
not-
hopefully in the next 5 years that we have another avgas provider that increases.
Okay.
Personally, the number I came up with was not having that information was 20 cents a gallon for both. But with that information, we could go to 20 cents on jet fuel and 15 cents on avgas per the trend.
I wouldn't go above what's recommended.
Well, if we increase those fees, I mean, these are the users of the airport. You're using,
Well, yes and no. There's a lot of users of the airport that don't fill up with gas.
well, they would if it was, if it
I
was
don't know, but
appropriately
I'm saying
priced.
I wouldn't, if this is what our experts are bringing to us as a recommendation, and this is a really sticky point for certain individuals, I wouldn't go above what the experts are bringing to us.
I would agree with that.
I tend to concur with that as well. I mean, we've got 15 cents is a fairly significant move from where we are right now. It's easily justifiable. We're well underneath the regional trends that we've seen over the last 5 years. And, if we need to do it again in 5 years at 2030, when we're looking at that outline budget, then,
Yeah.
Scott, you'll still be here representing us and,
Oh, we'll see.
Is there any other discussion on that? So we can kind of, is it okay if I'm just going to put a check mark by that one and lock
It's number
that
2
in?
on that list, but
Oh, no, this is a different, I'm looking at page 10.
ah,
Yeah, which is the options that he did.
gotcha.
Yes.
When he did it.
Okay.
So this is,
All right here.
this is,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that was what I asked about earlier, correct?
Correct, yes. So I'll just say there's really two different sets of numbers. When we first started the study, we looked at the average among the peer set airports, right? So when we define the region there, we're defining it with Utah surrounding states, and we look at comparable airports. When we look at regional trends for fuel flow speed, it's really looking much lower. So we look at a 50 nautical mile radius of Heber to see what close-in airports are doing, and it's very good set. We're not looking at the average price, we're looking at the average change in price on this. And the big driver there was Nephi, which this year went from 0 cents to 25 cents.
Holy cow.
So that's a 2,500% increase, and then went from 0 cents to 10 cents per hour. So when you look at those changes, they're driving all of their change. So that gives you an idea, and Nephi is a much smaller airport. So yeah, when we made the recommendation of 10 and 15 cents, that was basically comparable set of airports in the larger region. When we go and look at regional trends and average change in region, that's a different number where we're looking at the Wasatch Run essentially, 50 nautical miles around Heber for all public use airports. And that's where we're getting those numbers.
This recommendation is well within the guidelines on both of those studies.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And this is what Nadeem specifically, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about this very concept of trends versus averages and things like that. So, I mean, I feel like I
think we're being reasonable.
we have listened and they did it, and we're not going nearly as far as that we potentially could if we were so inclined.
Okay, next one.
Okay, so the next item is escalating landing fees by 3% annually. Let's just set that one aside till we get to the end. I think at a minimum, we can do that without any questions, but to Rocco's point.
So next year, if we increase the landing fees from $4 to $4.12, I mean, that's an accounting nightmare.
It's not, because we send it to,
No, but I mean, still, why not have it stay static for a number of years and then have a big jump?
because the settlement agreement only allows you to do it at 3%. But let's put that one to the side for a minute. So the next item on here is establish a hangar rental rate of 34 cents a square foot for city-owned hangars. So I would like to make a comment on this, which is we have 2 reversionary leases today, and they're 50 by 50 hangars at Daniels, or I'm sorry, on Hangar Row. I think that we should price those hangars specifically instead of trying to set a rental rate, because we need to deal with B, C, and D when those come up. And I don't want this to set a precedence for that. We're going to deal exclusively with those hangars. I mean, some of the peer set airports that we had, this is how they handle it, right? It's like this hangar costs this much, this hangar costs this much.
I'm going to stay out of this conversation because my airplane's in one of them.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to tell you the next thing, and you're not going to like what I say, which is I'm spending, as I said earlier, I'm spending about, I think it's $3,400 a month for a 50 by 70. I just had somebody that I know that leased a spot for an airplane inside a hangar that's paying $1,300 a month. If these hangars were available for lease for $2,000 a month, I would take one in an instant. I think that's absolutely market rate for what we can get for the hangars, if not more. And I think we should set it at a minimum of $2,000 a month for those hangars. Well, what size are they?
45 by 49-ish.
Okay, so they're close.
And you got a little 20 in front.
I'd still spend $2,000 a month for it. And we can always go down, you can't go up. If we truly have 365 people waiting for hangar space, then we should be able to fill it with somebody. And these hangars are going to go away within the next 5 years anyway, right?
And the rest of Hangar Row, when are the leases terminated, the rest of Hangar Row? Like in the next 2 years, right? I know, but their lease is still in, so they have to renew a lease. So at the same time, we'll want to renew those ground leases at about the same rate.
I think they still have like 7 years or something.
7 years.
But that's real money.
That's not very far.
They're all for
23.
Is there any comments on setting it at $2,000? Is there an agreement that we should put that at $2,000?
Sure.
Also, as far as the
You
lease.
okay with- I mean, I know you don't want to.
I'm just staying here, right here.
Okay, okay. I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't mean to put you in that position. My apologies.
We should double that. Seriously, once you get involved down there.
I'm happy with it, whatever you guys decide.
Okay.
That was 3,000 per month.
Per hangar, correct. Okay. Item number 4 is change the commercial aeronautical permit fee from 1% gross income to a fixed tier of $500 for gross income under 100,000, 1,000 for gross income between 100,000, and then $2,000 for gross income over $1 million. Much like Scott, I'm the only one, I guess, that's been paying that, whereas we have a lot of other people that should be. I'll stay out of the discussion and simply step back.
We need to get market rate on these hangars. I mean, it's been a,
Well, this is the commercial aeronautical fee now.
oh, the commercial aeronautical. I thought we were talking about the 34 cents.
No, no.
We're not talking about those
That
yet.
one was, everybody agreed to the $2,000.
Okay.
And I'm
And
taking.
we're not worried about B, C, or D yet.
No, we're not touching it.
That's a separate discussion.
Those are separate discussions, as we heard about earlier today.
I do have a question for you. So are you selling things from that pay sales tax?
So I'll be very candid. What we do on anything that we have where we have sales tax that would be assessed is because of that, we deliver it outside of here because our lease says that it has to be activity that's incurred here. So we'll take it outside.
Oh, you take it outside of Utah?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we would no longer do that.
I think that would be great. I mean, I'd say if things are being sold, if we collect a sales tax on it and having just the flat rate instead of the 1%.
And again, I will just make the statement that when I talk to other people at the airport that are running closet commercial operations, if it was simple and they could just get a permit fee to pay it, they would do that.
So that's kind of where I was coming from on, and again, I talked to Travis about this because of my background.
You guys.
Yeah,
the airport managers
we have
club.
the airport manager secret handshake. And since I don't have a hangar or an airplane here.
Right?
So my question on this one was, and maybe I missed it in your report, how much money are we talking about?
Again, it's hard to estimate because right now we're not collecting it.
Well,
Sorry, we just started collecting from one commercial aeronautical user. So in my analysis, I assumed $5,000.
How much?
$5,000 annually, approximately.
So my point, thank you. That kind of confirmed what I thought that it was, and I think because I had a couple of glasses of wine, I think I made this point last time about going down the rabbit hole, is I think for $5,000, it doesn't make sense to put this in here. Where I do agree with you is maybe a fixed fee.
but that's what it is. This is
Okay,
a fixed fee.
But yeah, but
And
as long as it's a fixed fee. And then the other question I had, and this is alongside of this, is how do you control it? That's kind of where my problem is. How do you say, well, let's say Jay has a buddy that comes in and wants to have somebody work on his airplane, and Jay has a particular expert, I'm just picking on you, has a particular expertise, and he brings his Husky in and they fix it and everything. Does that represent a commercial operation?
So the one thing is that my understanding is that the T hangars that are going to be built, if they're subleasing it, that will be constituted a commercial operation. And so this also will be a way to be able to collect that
Yes.
easily, right? So again,
No, I know
I tend to believe that people will do the right thing and somebody that doesn't, but I know we have, I mean, all of the commercial hot air balloon operators that are out there don't pay anything right now. There's a guy that's got a 141 commercial hot air balloon school at the airport and he's running under the radar. And so this makes it easy to comply.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
again, this is a policy decision. Whether you want to recommend a percentage or a fixed rate, it comes down to a policy decision. There's pros and cons with each.
Fixed rate. Who's in for it?
Fixed rate.
Art?
I'll go with that one. Yeah, I like it. I think
Okay, next item.
Okay, next item.
Fixed tier or a single fixed rate for all?
Fixed tier.
Yeah, what you recommended?
Okay. Right. The next item on here is assessing the AOA access fee for all users with no waiver for hangar owners. And so my understanding is that there's $40, it's $40 a year per access. And part of that goes to pay for the system that we use, right? It's not just a physical card. There's monthly fees that are associated with it, people to operate it. My only comment that I would make, and as a hangar operator, I will happily pay the $40 without any regard for whether or not I get one or not. But I do think that there might be some hangar owners that would say, you know what, I'm paying a lot of money in lease. I'm paying significant property taxes that do come to the city of Heber. I should at least get, and my lease says that I have access to my hangar. I should probably be able to at least have one card that gives me access to the hangar. And if I want more, I'll pay for it.
The one thing I would say is this would give an opportunity also to check their documents, because we should be doing that, right? US passport, making sure they're a citizen, all the safety issues. So if they come in to renew their $40 a year fee, the person that's renewing that can just see if the documents are up to date.
And insurance.
And insurance. Yeah, documents, insurance.
Again,
And it's way, way easier if it's just everybody, as far as,
Yeah, anyone who has access.
What about, because to your point, I can see your point about if you're paying all that, why do I have to pay to get on the airport to get to my hangar? What about giving the hangar owners a break? In other words, have a $40, I pay $40 a year to get access onto the airport. Maybe if you're a hangar owner, give them a slight reduction is that something we want to think about? I mean, this is not a lot of money.
I will defer to two hangar owners on here and let them address it, because I'm not going to get wrapped around the axle over $40, but it has been something that I've heard at the airport that people were grumbling about.
I agree with Jason. Personally, $40, I don't care. But there is a lot of grumbling about, well, they can't keep me from going to my hangar. So one access per hangar would be a compromise in my book. And any additional would be at whatever the rate that the city sets.
Well, here's something else. So if someone has to produce their airplane insurance, that proves they have an airplane in the hangar. And we have a lot of hangars that don't have airplanes.
You can do that anyway.
You can do.
You know who the hangar owners are. If you want to review it once a year, having me to pay $40 to encourage you to go make sure I'm correct makes no sense at all.
we could do those during the hangar inspections as well.
Well, you could just
Two
make
separate
the card,
issues.
You could just make the cards expire and you have to come in person to renew them. And you have to present the
Oh, no.
documents.
Now we're going to add another person to the payroll.
Yeah. Like I say, it's just a lot more work than you guys think it is, but I agree. If you want to, I'd rather just have a flat fee and just keep the same. If you guys want to do one per hangar, that's fine. It is, we do have to pay more for that, but
I truly believe one per hangar is a good compromise.
If it alleges we have to pay for every entry card, every entry tag on our, it's
Pay
like,
for this?
so
Yeah.
like, it gets complicated because if you have two owners, if it's an LLC and there's 5 owners,
One per,
you just say,
per
you
hangar.
guys just pick one.
Exactly, one per hangar.
I think one per hangar.
Then one per hangar? All right. And then, so how many?
Everyone else pays
And,
$40.
and what I would say is, assuming that assuming that the city council adopts this, and is it going to be at their next meeting, Matt?
It's likely to be the first meeting in September. The reason being is they have a truth and taxation public hearing.
Yeah, we can't hear any other items.
Okay.
We can't hear any other items on the, after the.
It's likely to be in September. The meeting that will be on the 20th is going to be limited in time because they have a mandatory public hearing at 7 p.m. they have to hit, and there'll be no additional business after that. So the first meeting is September.
My recommendation would be that, all of those other badges that have not received money for go dormant on October 1st, right? And then you'll find out, because we've got a lot of badges out there
Yeah,
with
we
not
do.
a lot of people that have paid for them.
People shouldn't have the badge, it shouldn't
That's
have
right.
a card anymore.
I kind of like that from a security standpoint. I see people driving around all the
And
time.
you can give your card to whoever.
Well, you can't, because it's all on your phone now.
I mean, but the old cards.
Yeah.
Because there's still people with cards.
Oh, those cards should go away. Oh, yeah, sorry. All right.
We're not issuing any new ones.
Cards still work?
Very few. So, like,
I didn't
like,
realize that. I thought it all.
so the balloon pilots that have multiple chaser vehicles and stuff, they had one, but we're not issuing any new ones. So
They don't pay a
they'll
commercial,
phase out.
they don't pay a commercial activity fee either.
They will be.
Okay.
You guys just got to decide how you're doing it.
When they get their card reactivated, they have to pay the commercial.
That's right, exactly. Okay. Item number 6 was collect a $45 a month parking fee on airport-owned property. And just to refresh everybody's memory, and Scott, you weren't here, what we're talking about is there's approximately 38 parking spots behind OK3 and adjacent to the terminal that's being used for parking. And in the peer set airports that we looked at, there were almost all of those airports charged for parking on there. And so I would say that the majority of ones that I looked at charged $100 a month, and Moab charges $150 a month. And so it adds up to real money. I mean, if we've got 38 spots and we're doing 100 per month, that's almost $50,000, which, is the same equivalent of raising the fuel flowage fee 5 cents a gallon. So, I mean, it's significant money. I've paid personally at other airports where I keep cars, $100 is the minimum that I've paid ever for that. And this was 10 years ago, it was $100.
That's what I pay to go to work in Salt Lake, $100 a
How
month.
do you, just out of curiosity, will it be up to OK3 to
No.
manage that?
No, we would probably assess some technologies to assist us. Travis and I would need to get together to figure out what that might be, an app or some other current technology, but we'd make that work somehow.
Like a gate that you have to pay to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe it's a reading of your license plate, something like that. We'll have to see.
I think step 1 is adopting a fee, and then we can go figure out how to do it. So I'll throw $100 out there a month, because that seems like, again, that's what I paid. Maybe it should be 150 like Moab. Is there?
Pretty,
Scott, what do you? Would you support 150?
$100 a month.
100? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I support $100 a month for.
Bill, you good with that? All right. We're ticking down. So far we're well over $1.1 million, because we've raised the hangar rates. We've increased the parking by, quite a bit over that.
Now you're assuming that we'll get 45 cars in there.
It's always overfilling with cars.
I was saying any of those cars that are not registered with the airport or whatever, within 6 months are towed.
Yeah.
Because I think there are cars that have just been sitting there for years.
Yeah, tell them, and we'll make more money on the impound fees. So the other item that wasn't on here, but I'm going to add it on as number 7, was the 10% on the rental car rates. And again, when I was looking at the, these other airports that were kind of market-based surveys, a large majority of them had that fee. And it is assessed to the person renting the vehicle. It's not assessed to the rental car company. It's what we all see when I mean, Scott, when you've traveled somewhere, you'll see it on on your fee, and most people never even give it a second thought. I mean, to me,
I pay $35 a day, no matter where I go for a rental car, and it's always $90 a day
yeah, exactly.
because of the fees.
That's right. And so I tend to think that 10% on the rental car rates, and also on, what was the other term that you used there? So rent TNC.
This was, I've spoken to Nadeem about this before because there's something in his contract about rental cars. Or I want to make sure we check that first.
Seems like Nadeem did make a comment at your previous AAB meeting about his, what's the word I want, his non-support for the TNC fee. Internally, we've had very broad discussions about it. We think it is permissible, but we would have to verify that with the city's airport attorney. But I don't think it's a contractual issue. I think it's simply whether we can legally assess it against the FBO.
We're not assessing it against the FBO. To be clear, we're assessing it against the rental car company.
And that's to me, that's the kicker. It's against the rentees of not the renter of the cars.
And I think if I remember what Nadeem said, and again, I'm probably not encompassing everything that he said, but he stated that he rents space to Go Rentals as a subtenant of his to be able to lease cars to lease cars. And I think there was some concern that we were trying to interfere on his sublease that he had with OK3. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the actual end user that's renting a car. And it's just going to be a line item on there. Heck, I doubt any of them will ever see it or complain about it.
Airport tax. It's an end user airport tax.
Yeah. I mean, we all pay it whenever we go rent a car at a 121 airport.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my list of items that were on here.
We have not addressed the transient airport landing. We just said we're going to escalate.
Well, so let's circle back up to that. So what we've done here is if I'm reading Ryan's calculations, if we were looking at option two and option 1B generated equivalently the same amount of money, which generated, $1.1 million as a reserve, right? It meets all of our expenses plus generates a reserve balance by 2030, which heads us off into the next 5 years that we have. We know that we've got fairly significant assets, to your point, Scott, with those 3 reversionary hangars that could potentially be worth as much in net present value, whether we sell them, whether we do a pre-funded lease of, $2 to $3 million, right? Which would more than meet, the spending that we think, and plus, to your point earlier, Rocco, about all of the Olympic, money that we can probably, in some way, we're going to be able to hopefully get that to help get this project done sooner rather than later. It seems to me that there's no harm in increasing the landing fees by 3% annually, because we can do that contractually without any concern whatsoever. And then I would make the statement of one of the things that I think that every one of the peer set airports that we have looked at, and candidly every airport that I've visited, including large Class B airports, is they exempt piston aircraft under, either 6,000 or 8,000 pounds from landing fees. And that's the GA traffic that people don't mind in the community, right? It's not the jets, it's not that. And I think we should seriously take a look at exempting piston aircraft under 8,000 pounds from landing fees. We've increased substantially the revenue that we were talking about here. And I think that's just, it helps to encourage aviation. And we need to do that, because if people stop flying and stop visiting Heber, then when they move up to other aircraft that are assessed landing fees, they're not going to come here.
I did some back of the envelope using a Cessna 182 on both of these. And then I compared it to a Bombardier, what they're paying. The Bombardier doesn't give a damn about paying landing fees. They just incorporate, they put that into whatever they're charging their customers or whatever. The guys that really, when $150 an hour for a 172, and That's a fairly large percentage. So I absolutely agree with you. I'd say eliminate that below 8,000.
I agree.
I agree 100%.
That's why Heber has a bad name all over the state
does.
because
we charge a landing fee for a
they get a
172.
call a week later, like, you owe $4.
Yeah, that's just a pain in the zoo.
Yeah.
So does everybody agree with that?
Absolutely.
So my list that I came up with here was to increase the fluid fee as discussed or as presented. Did we decide we wanted? Yeah, we did decide we wanted to escalate the landing fees by 3%, and we will exempt aircraft under piston aircraft under 8,000 pounds. Piston aircraft under 8,000 pounds from the landing fees. We will establish a rental rate of the two um, hangars that are currently reverted to $2,000 per month. We will change the commercial aeronautical permit fee to a fixed 3-tier system as outlined in the report. We will assess an AOA access fee for all users with one provided to hangar owners. And they will collect a $100 a month parking fee on the airport owned property. And we will assess a 10% rental car fee assessed to the rentee for rental cars and TNC.
So just real quick on exempting transient aircraft under 8,000 pounds. Are there any non-piston aircraft under 8,000 pounds?
Yeah, there's like a Meridian. VisionJet is 8,000 pounds. So it needs to be piston aircraft.
Just an aircraft.
Yeah, because you've got TBMs that are, you've got Meridians that are.
I don't think there should be a problem.
Can we exempt electric aircraft under 8,000 pounds?
Now, that's an interesting.
Can't believe you just asked that. I think we should, yes.
So piston and electric aircraft
I
under
would
8,000.
exempt all electric aircraft.
Okay,
Because if there's an electric aircraft that's 20,000 pounds, that's amazing.
that would be awesome. And it's all battery weight. So we'll exempt piston and electric aircraft under 8,000 pounds.
Please note that I made that recommendation.
Please
not
not, yes. Yes. And my electric aircraft are based here, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But I was actually, Travis, we missed you on the electric aircraft committee meeting today, but there's been a big push in Utah to develop infrastructure for electric aircraft. And because of the fact that I've got electric aircraft here, Heber is on the map for that and is going to be one of those areas. And because of the council's support for that, which is tremendous, I mean, that's going to be awesome. So hats off to Travis, Matt, and the council.
Can I ask just a quick question on, are we going to be, is there a concern that there will be some public reaction to the fact that we're not increasing the landing fee for the larger aircraft because of the concerns that's always raised? Well, they're not raising those landing fees. That's going to bring more traffic, more biz jets in here, et cetera.
I mean, to your point earlier, though, the 3% is, I guess the 3% is something that's in a settlement agreement that Nadeem indicated in his settlement agreement that he could live with, right? And so we're adopting a smorgasbord of changes here and trying to kind of spread the impacts that are out. Landing fees should never, ever be viewed as punitive for people not landing here, right? We don't want that. And so I think it's something that we should evaluate next year after we've had a view to do this. We are increasing them by 3%.
I just wanted to bring that up.
No, and I think it's a legitimate discussion point. But if these are the recommendations, it would be great if we could have a motion to make that recommendation to City Council to adopt these charges.
And I'll abstain from this vote, but I will take whatever recommendation you have to the city council and encourage that.
So Jason, just one more. Number one up here is a rate that's currently charged at the airport, but it's not on the schedule rates of fees. So I would just recommend consider adding that to the schedule.
Oh, okay. So we should also add to that the increase. So the airport apron lease rate should be 7 cents to 25 cents a square.
So, and the hangars on Hangar Row now own the apron in front of them.
This is not going to impact.
Yeah, this won't impact existing leases. This is the,
And it would not impact existing leases. You're right. So this is okay, great, my understanding.
Okay.
Lease doesn't-
so the lease, yeah, so the leases that, that everybody has,
To be future.
you have to improve the apron, but the apron's not technically your leased property. That's part of the taxiway, actually. Because you have to have that for wingspan that go up and down the airport.
I'd be fine with that.
Okay, so is that added? So somebody needs to make a motion adopting all of these items, including the apron lease.
One thing on there that we didn't discuss, eliminate based aircraft waiver for landing fees.
We did not change that. There's still a based aircraft waiver for landing
Okay.
fees.
So that, okay.
And there's no based aircraft fee.
There is no based aircraft fee.
Okay.
So we did
I
not
just
make a
wanted
recommendation on it.
clarification on that.
And they pay substantial sums of money to the state and also with property tax here. So is there a motion?
I move that we accept the changes as outlined by the chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Scott, you're abstaining from the vote, and it's not a tie, so I don't get to vote. Thank you. I mean, we didn't hit 5 o'clock, but we did hit 5 1/4.
This was like my favorite meeting I've ever been to. People can talk to each other reasonably.
So there was, we adopted a recommendation. That's
Yes.
correct, yeah. And I can circle, I've got my notes written down here, if we need to do that.
So based on what I captured, that would put the reserve at 1.1 million. Which is perfect. Exactly what you're looking at with those other options.
Great. Do we need, so on the BCD issue, because we had someone come forward tonight already asking for
So I think,
an extension, do we need to address that at our next meeting?
I think we need to have an outline from council or from our city attorney. Sorry, I keep saying council, and of what our obligations are and what our options are. And then I think we're going to need to have a discussion about that. And it would be nice if we could have, perhaps you can take to the airport attorney the question about, do we need to, if we want to have an option of quote unquote selling a hangar versus doing a long-term lease with a net value cost up front. I think those are, Nadeem has emphasized that, and I think we all recognize that that's probably the single largest asset that we have to be able to help us with our cash flow issue, because we don't have a revenue problem, we have a cash flow issue.
Yeah.
So quickly on that, the recommendation you're making to the city council is that on those particular hangars, right now, we're going to do a hangar rental rate of 34 cents per.
Oh, no.
$2,000 per hangar.
I'm talking B, C, and D.
We didn't make
We're
any
not making
recommendation.
a recommendation on those hangars.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Nadeem didn't attend this meeting, so do we need to address his letter or just?
Well, I think we ticked off every item on his letter.
Okay, so,
And we rescheduled it once because Nadeem wasn't able to attend. And so unfortunately, we needed to get these adopted. So I think, at least from where I stand, and he may not agree with these charges, and that's his discretion, and I totally respect his, business for concerning it. But I think we had we undertook what was given to us. We took into consideration his comments. We addressed all of his comments. And in fact, we did not raise his landing fees, or not his, but the landing fees for transient aircraft on here. So we did what he asked at the very early stages when we first met, which was he wanted to see everybody paying their quote unquote fair share, was the term that he used. And I think today we spread that revenue base amongst every type of user at the aircraft, whether they are transient, whether they are based, whether they're commercial, or whether they're rental cars, or whether they're lessees of the city. I mean, that was
It's about as fair as you can get.
I think so.
Just get, I'll agree back.
Sure.
You need him to read back each item.
Yeah, just, I think I got it, but I just wanted to make sure we got it in the notes right.
I did. Oh, well. Yeah, I can list them again just for avoidance of doubt. So the first item was we adopted the recommendation on the fuel flowage fee from 5 cents a gallon to 10 cents a gallon for avgas and 15 cents and up to 15 cents a gallon for jet fuel, effective January 2025. And we continue to study the market rate adjustments, and that's the trend that we're talking about here, not the averages, every fifth year. We agreed to increase the landing fees of transient aircraft by 3% annually and exempt piston and electric aircraft under 8,000 pounds from landing fees. We agreed to establish a hangar rental rate of $2,000 per month for the 2 city-owned hangars that are on Hangar Row. We agreed to change the commercial aeronautical permit fee from 1% gross income to a fixed tier of $500 for gross income under $100,000, $1,000 for gross income under between $100,000 and $1 million, and $2,000 for gross income over $1 million. We agreed to assess an AOA access fee for all users of $40 per month, with one AOA access given to somebody that has a hangar or a lease agreement with the city. We agreed to collect a $100 per month parking fee on airport-owned property. And we agreed to assess a 10% rental car fee and T&C fee charge. We also agreed to increase the apron fee from 7 cents per square foot to 25 cents per square foot.
Just to be clear, the access for the hangar owner is at no charge.
Yeah, that is correct. There is one given at no charge to a hangar owner, or to somebody that has a lease with the city. I guess that's what I should say. $40 per access, with a strong recommendation that all cards be turned off on October 15th. Is that consistent with everybody's recollection? Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you. With that, and there's no other business on our agenda.
Just a couple communication items I'm interested in. Travis, how many large aircraft that are here a lot or based here, or not based here, but are here, have started to pay landing fees because of the new rule?
A lot.
They're not based
We
here.
had 35 based aircraft and now we have like 200 and something.
Really?
We weren't getting credit for any of that.
Okay, so now we get credit for it. Awesome.
And the state's actually talking about giving us back some money from those when they collect them from an airport, giving each of the airports like a check for it instead of just credit.
Awesome. I would say one thing that we didn't discuss, but I think is important, and it didn't weigh into the calculus here, but the $1.1 million in the reserve, those of us that are involved in the arcane industry recognize that the FAA's reauthorization budget actually increased. Instead of it being 90% of federal funds that are matching for the next 2 years, it's actually 95%. So my guess would be, and this isn't something that we want to bank on today, but we'll actually end up with a higher, everything else being equal, we'd have a higher reserve because the federal government's kicking in an additional 5% for the next 24 months on projects.
I actually
Damn it. Oh, sorry. Darn it.
Another quick question. Fuel farm, how far in the distant future is the new fuel farm?
That would be an airport engineer question.
Because it needs to be sooner than later.
Like relocating
Just relocating OK3's fuel farm, because, I mean, the avgas tank's about to be done. So,
you talk about OK3's fuel farm replacement.
yes.
Travis, that's a question for you, really.
Well, because OK3 wants to put it where they're going to be, and we've got to verify where they're going to be before we can study that. So we're doing the environmental study to verify that, but we're moving along on that.
Any other updates?
The 10 acres located to the southwest of the airport at the end, was that runway 4?
RPZ and the runway 4.
Uh-huh. That should close in about a week. The FAA is paying 90% of that. UDOT is paying 5% of that. And the airport is paying 5%, which amounts to about $300,000. So that will be 10 acres that will be put into the airport's portfolio. And so doing that will not be developed. So that's positive news.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Open space, the airport's helping provide open space.
Absolutely. Any other comments from the board?
I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I'm getting used to making motions to adjourn meetings.
That's very good.
I don't want to sit there forever.
Has the recording ended?
Good job, gentlemen. That was a great meeting.
It was up your way. I had to take a road trip.